I'm Bea.
And I'm Sam.
And we're two best friends who like to talk shit about smut, wingspan,
and sometimes books.
Join us every Wednesday for a new episode. Hello. Oh, I feel like this Christmas Day here at Pod of Smut and Wingspan, we've been waiting for this for so long.
I feel like I've done drugs. I feel so happy.
Yeah, remember, was it after Kelly Hart that you cried? No, it was Pencole. Yeah.
After Pencole, I just burst out crying and you were just sitting on my sofa like...
Disassociated for like an hour.
Yeah.
Like, I just didn't go home, I just sat in the house for like an hour, like, I'm not leaving.
But yeah, if you listened last week...
Mm-hmm.
You know what is coming. Well, you know what's coming because you've seen the titles. It's just a stupid thing to say. But we are interviewing Kate Golden today.
Yeah, which we've said this a million times, but she's the first ever author that said yes to being interviewed by us. We never had it on our bingo cards for doing this. It was only because we never thought nobody would want to speak to us. Like, why would they? Which is totally fine.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, we just can't believe this day has finally come. We're here. Talking to Kate Golden.
Yeah, and I feel like because I think we spoke to her on Instagram. I don't think it was ever through like official channels, like through her publishers and stuff. And she said yes to us, and that really like lit a fire under our bums.
Yeah, because it made us think like, oh my god, one of our like all-time favourite authors, Kate Golden, said yes. Maybe other people might say yes to us, and they obviously have.
Yeah. So she you'll hear this in the interview, but she gave us the confidence to go out and reach out to people. And, you know, I don't think we would have reached out to other podcasts and like Bookish Dads if she hadn't have said yes to us in the beginning. So, yeah, she's the reason that we're doing author interviews, I suppose.
100%. I think we can easily give like such a large portion to our... success is a weird word, but you know what I mean? Like, Kate Golden, we owe you everything.
Yeah, but enough from us. Just get into the episode because
we're all here for one reason.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic, and we're not going to chat your heads off today.
No, because she's just fucking class.
So enjoy.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Kate Golden, and I'm the author of the Sacred Stone series, which is a trilogy that spans A Dawn of Onyx, A Promise of Peridot, and A Reign of Rose.
First of all, I guess our first question we have is... Your obviously Sacred Stones is your debut series and Dawn of Onyx like your debut novel. So I guess tell us a little bit about what made you want to start writing in the romantasy genre specifically.
Yeah, that's a good question. It was completely unexpected. I had never pursued writing or thought of myself as a writer. I had never, written anything before. But I was always a really big reader, and I think like a lot of people in 2020, discovered Book Talk, and through Book Talk discovered fantasy romance. I had always loved romance, and then I had also read a lot of fantasy novels, but had never found, it was always kind of like you did a fantasy series, then you do like a contemporary romance palette cleanser, like that was at least how it was for me. And then it really was, ACOTAR for like a lot of people. I read that and I was like, wait, all my favorite things exist in one genre? I had no idea. And so I fell down the rabbit hole and read every piece of romantasy that existed truly from like 2020 to 2022, and was on a trip with my husband, and he had brought a lot of books to read and I had brought a lot of books to read, but I was in a book slump. I couldn't get into any of them, which is like the worst feeling ever. Especially like on a beach vacation where it's like, we were just going to read by the beach for like 6 straight days. Anyway, and so my husband encouraged me. He was like, what do you feel like is missing in these books that you can't seem to start? And I sort of listed the things that I happen to love. And they were so specific, I was like, I want sort of like a captive romance, like a Beauty and the Beast or like a Hades and Persephone thing with like a good girl and a bad boy, but he's a softie and she's got inner strength. And I want her to have the same kind of anxiety I have. And he's like, oh my God, this book doesn't exist. You're being too specific, but you should write it. Like if you have this idea in your head of this thing that you want, that's sort of like you've found bits and pieces in all these books, you should just write it yourself. And so completely for fun, I outlined the book on the trip, and then I got home and couldn't get it out of my head, and I ended up writing the book, which was a really unhinged thing to do, but that was what I did.
I love that. That's amazing.
Yeah, I feel like we have very similar like starts in our romantasy journey. Like we were both found ACOTAR, and then it was like, oh, this is now like an obsession.
Yeah, this is my personality now.
Yes, oh, fully. It was like, and it's like the only thing in the world you want to talk about, and nobody else, at least for me, like nobody else was reading it or got it or was on Book Talk. And I would just be sitting at dinner with people, and in my head, I was just like, Autumn Court, Eric, like Resand, like trying to like, like I could only think about these books, this series, and I was like, it's an addiction. Like there's crack in these novels. It's unbelievable. Sent me down the most insane rabbit hole.
And that's how like Sam ended up reading it, because that was me for like a year on my own. And then I was like, right, what's my one non-book friend that I can like rope into this? Who's the weakest that I can like rope in? And I was like, it's Sam.
He's the most susceptible. Yeah.
And I was just like nagged. And then it was like, yeah. And then what did you read? All 16 or 15 Sergio Mas books in 31 days?
Yeah.
Yeah. As you should. As you know?
Yeah. While trying to work full time. Yeah. Yikes.
Who needs a job when you have the master?
So I guess sticking with your writing, can you tell us a bit about your writing space? Are you like an in the office writer? Do you like writing in public, in like coffee shops? Like how do you get into the zone?
Yes, I love authors like Leigh Bardugo talks about wanting to write in a coffee shop and be surrounded by people. I wish that I was like that, because that's so romantic, like capital R romantic.
Yeah.
No, I sit like a little gremlin on a little like couch in this office that I'm in right now, and like hibernate. I like to be completely alone. I'll listen to like a lyricless music, usually like a score. I like the if I'm writing fantasy, I like the Game of Thrones soundtrack, or like the Witcher soundtrack, or like a Miyazaki, like a Miyazaki soundtrack to like one of the more, like Princess Mononoke or something like that, Howl's Moving Castle. And I will just like go into the fantasy zone, and like will usually wake up really early to get writing. And sometimes go for like 12 hours, like an insane person. Like I will just get lost. I'll get lost in it. So that's sort of like my ideal writing thing. But I also have a full-time job. So that's usually like on the weekends. On weekdays, I really do wake up grossly early to try to get in as much of that time before I have to like start the job. So that's the writing journey.
I really like I'm like envious of when people say they're that type of author, because I wish I was that type of writer. But like we were saying to another author that we speak, Rachel Schneider, because she's currently writing her book too, and she put a story up the other day, like I tried the 4 a.m. thing, and like no, it's not for me. She's like, I'm not that person, and I was like, same, that is not me.
You know what? I was never like a super morning person either. It was sort of like born out of like, how sometimes you were talking about Christmas morning, like, when your body wakes you up because you're so excited to do something, like even if you want to sleep in and your phone is off, you're just kind of like, your eyes just like blink open. So that started to happen because I knew it was the only time that I had to write. So I would just start like waking up naturally at like sometimes 4:15 in the morning, like truly like I was possessed, because I knew that if I didn't, like I would not get to write that day, because my job often will go like more into the evenings than it will start early in the morning. Also, to be clear, like usually I never kind of like have to be in the office. It's more like meetings, Zooms, whatever. Sometimes they don't start till noon. So I was like, I could have a whole stretch of time if I wake up early. So I feel like you can't force yourself. If I set an alarm, it will never happen. But if my body is just like, let's go. Also, sometimes, this is TMI, but like you ever wake up in the middle of the night to pee and then you're just kind of like awake? Like I would do that. I'm like, well, time to go write 6 chapters. It's like the opportunity presented itself,
Amazing. I love it so much. So when you first published A Dawn of Onyx, if we're right in saying that you did that as an indie author, so it was your like self-published, and then obviously after the fact, just before I think A Promise of Peridot, then you got picked up traditionally. But what would be any advice you could give any aspiring indie authors right now that might be listening?
Well, I think there is a huge amount of like merit, value, pros and cons to both indie and to trad. I would say if you're an aspiring indie author, I would say know the costs. It's very expensive to publish a book. Obviously, you have to pay for, I mean, usually you should. I'm not going to say you should, actually. If you would like to, it is helpful to pay for like a copy editor, like someone to go through and make sure that you haven't missed things, because you could read your own book 15 times and miss that, like, you literally spelled the first word on the first page wrong. But you know that those people, that costs money. Designing your cover costs money. If you have a fantasy map or something, someone making that costs money. Buying your barcodes costs money. You know, any kind of paid ads or publicity. A lot of, you know, great like TikTokers and Instagrammers, like they make a living by charging a cost to read and review your book. So all of those things cost money, and it just adds up really quickly. And so I'd say that sort of, plus I haven't been to any like book conventions or anything. I'll start doing that actually next year, which I'm really excited about. But like, if you're an indie author and you want to take yourself to events and you want to bring your own books, all those things cost a lot of money. So I would say that's the first thing, is like, don't let that scare you away, but know it beforehand, so you aren't like me and you're like, I'm just going to do this. And then you're like, oh my God, all my credit cards are maxed out. So
Yeah.
Probably the first thing I would say. You know, the second thing I would say is that you know, the marketing, I feel like I'm on like Shark Tank or something. Like, the hustle is a huge part of your book getting out there. And I would say everything before release is really important. That's something that I sort of like through a lot of Googling figured out when I was in the indie world, but now that I'm in the trad world, it's honestly the same. The emphasis is always on pre-orders and driving up like excitement before the book is out, because that's how everything you sell before the book comes out is marked as like the first day or like the first week. So that's how you get like really high up in like the Amazon store and like on the Kindle Unlimited store, like new fantasy releases. And that's how I think you get a lot of buzz, is by getting quite high amount of pre-orders. So I would say, like, even if you're like, I'm going to burn out, I can't do this for that much longer, trying to do whatever you can to like get your book in front of people and make the TikToks and make the reels and make the Instagrams and talk to people that do book reviews on YouTube, on Goodreads, on all these different platforms before your book release. That, I think that was instrumental in my book, because my book was actually only available on Indie for 2 months. It came out in December and we pulled it in February because that's when we did the deal with Berkeley. But I was like making TikToks for it and doing all the stuff since I think August of the previous year. So and that was all before it came out in December. So a lot of people who are like, oh, I found it on TikTok, most of that happened before the book was even out. So I would say those aren't really, I guess, like writing advice, but that is like indie pub advice that I have.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think it's such an important part of the process, isn't it? Because like, you can write a book, but it's like, but what do you do with it once you have it? Like, where do you go? How do you start this process?
Totally. And I feel like there is no shortage of advice on writing. I mean, like there are way more talented, more successful authors that can tell you about writing than me, you know, who have written novels on it, who have, you know, you can watch all of Brandon Sanderson's classes if you're a fantasy fan that he taught at BU on YouTube. But I don't feel like there are a lot of people talking about the like actual, like you said, once you've written the book and you want to indie publish it, what in the world that journey looks like. So you know, there are obviously authors like we were talking about Amber Nicole before we started recording and how much we love her, but, you know, who have done a lot more indie than I have and been far more successful at it. But whenever I can help people with the indie, it's like it's the Wild West. So I'm like, I'm here to help in any way that I can.
Almost everybody we've interviewed so far has started as indie,
Yeah.
I think, from right in saying, and then some have continued indie or some have then flipped to traditional. And yeah, we always tend to ask it because I think like a lot of our listeners are like straddling the two worlds, and it's just interesting to see like everybody's different like path with how they get to where they are.
Well, it's also like, especially for fantasy romance, that is a genre that is relatively new. I mean, as far as like it being its own kind of market, there has always been fantasy, and there's always been fantasy that's sort of maybe more geared towards women. So you have things like Outlander, you know, that have a strong romantic through line. I guess maybe that's not fantasy, but there's time travel. So, you know, and then there's also obviously always been romance, like Harlequin romance, you know, like paperback romance. But this kind of like new era of both kind of more accessible contemporary romance that like doesn't have Fabio on the cover. Not that there's anything wrong, those books are awesome too. But you know, and this kind of, like we were saying, the mass verse, you know, fantasy romance is sort of new, and for a long time there wasn't really space for that in the traditional publishing world. So indie sort of like took off because it was a fantastic market for authors to get those books to readers kind of before traditional publishing realized that was a need. Now I think it's much, much easier if you are a aspiring fantasy romance author and you would like to be at a traditional, in traditional publishing. There are a lot more avenues for that. But yeah, indie was sort of a really, I'm not surprised so many people you talk to start in indie because it was a great resource, you know?
Yeah, I think it really has changed this genre and how you see it, which I think is an amazing thing. Like, we have spoken about this a few times, but I think it puts the power back in the reader's hands as well, because there's some like series, and you know, there's some series that probably 10 years ago, if you'd have pitched that in a traditional publishing house in London, they would have been like, no, absolutely not. But then because it's down to the readers, like you've got series that are doing like so incredibly well because it's the reader that dictates the popularity, I guess.
Totally. Oh, 100%. And I think that's like the most exciting thing ever. You know, it's like so fun to like disrupt the genre and, or like, you know, the book world as a whole and find out what readers really want, you know? I think it's been awesome.
So both of us have obviously recently devoured Reign of Rose. What was your most unexpected challenge when writing Reign of Rose?
Oh, how much time do you have? There were a few challenges. It was definitely the hardest book. At the time that I wrote it, it was the hardest book that I had written. Now, that's not true anymore, but I'm sure we can get to that later. I would say the biggest challenge, I would say I'll pick two. The first one was obviously making sure that like everything was tied up. You know, it's a lot to remember, frankly, like so many moving pieces, so many characters, so many plot points, and wanting to make sure everything is tied up organically and in a way that's true to the characters and is satisfying. And sometimes there would be like a pretty little bow that would make so much sense, but I just couldn't bring myself to do it because it didn't feel authentic or it felt like plot leading character or something. And sometimes there was something where it's like, oh, if only I had known I'd end up here in book 3, I never would have done this thing in book 1. So there were a lot of like those kind of creative like problem solving moments that sometimes got really down, you know, like got really hard. You know, I have a lot of memories of forcing my husband, my friends to like take long walks around my neighborhood with me while we just like went over and over like a really specific plot hole. So I'd say that probably was one. And then I think it's hard when your characters are so in love and they have gotten back together without like spoiling too much of the third book, you know, when they are no longer separated by, you know, plot, by a plot point that pulls them apart, but you have hopefully done a decent job setting up two characters that would not, you know, have issues with miscommunication, would not, you know, betray each other, would not break up out of, you know, it's like these people, to me at least, I'm like, these are really, really, like, these are soulmates. They're a couple that has a strong foundation. Like, they're going to be in it through thick and through thin. And that's wonderful. And I'm so happy for them, but that's kind of boring. It's like, that's boring for the reader when you got there halfway through the end of the book. So having to come up with, you know, fun ways to test their relationship, to keep the tension alive, both sexually, but also emotionally, to pull them apart from one another without, you know, like, she thinks he's cheating on her or like whatever, you know what I mean? That was a challenge too, because I think at the end of the day, when you're a romance reader, you're really in it for like the tension and the slow burn and the friction. And you don't want to read a full book about like a really happy, committed couple that is really honest and has communication. You're like, okay, like I'm good on that. So that was a challenge too. I definitely feel like I learned a lesson in like, maybe next time my final couple will not get together till the end of the series, but also, you know, I'm hesitant to say that because it was lovely also getting to write so many chapters of them like being together after 2 books where they aren't. So that's my long-winded answer to that.
No, that's amazing.
No. We were glad we definitely didn't feel like we missed the will they, won't they in book 3. Like, we love that, but it is also like we just love those characters so dearly that it was nice to know like we were safe, you know.
Also, it's like they wanted for, that was terrible grammar, but like for a long time.
Like,
they needed a little bit of happiness. I made them suffer so much. So
we our episode on Reign of Rose released today, and in that episode we said, well, we've never read a Kate Golden series before, so is she a happy ender? Like, is somebody just gonna, is it not going to be the happy end that we want? Because we don't know.
Yeah.
Wow, I never thought about that. And, it's funny because I got a lot of emails and DMs, messages from people after the end of the second book, sort of like, again, without spoiling anything too much, like really, really worried about Arwen's, a specific part of Arwen's fate. They're like, is there going to be, rape and sexual assault in the third book? Like, I just want to know, it's like, I can't wait 6 months for the book to come out, not know this. And it was so interesting to me because I have never done this before either. This is, new to me as well. And I'm like, in my head, like, you think that I would do that to my characters? I love her. I would never let that happen to her.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, these people don't know me. Like, they don't know that, that I am as hopelessly in love with these characters as they are. And while I will push them to the brink for the sake of, drama and stakes, I would like, I'm too in love with them to really like not give everybody a happy ending, and even more so like to let anything that terrible happen. So I was like, so that was so interesting, is like remembering that everyone's not in your head. Like I knew, of course, from the beginning that this is, I feel comfortable spoiling that it is a happy ending kind of series. Right? Like other people don't know that, which I thought was that's a very good point.
Yeah.
My theory when we recorded Promise of Peridot, I was like, I've got it all sussed out. I know exactly what's going to happen. I said, Cain will show up and she'll be pregnant and he'll think she's pregnant by Lazarus, but it'll be his baby because she didn't take the tonic in Promise of Peridot. And B was like, okay. As I've got it sussed, I know what's coming.
No, so many people thought that. Like, so many people said that. And by the way, I was like, damn, that would have been really fun. But let us know what happened. But no, you're not the only person who had that idea.
So kind of staying on the topic of sacred stones, where did your inspiration initially come from when it came to naming all the territories and kingdoms after the precious stones?
I always have loved, even kind of pre my Sarah Maas obsession, in fantasy, in any kind of fantasy storytelling, the different lands kind of each having their own, personality, clothing, weather, relationship to religion and commerce. Like, I always thought that was interesting. I think that obviously the courts in ACOTAR are a great example of that. It's like each one feels like it has its own, aesthetic and vibe. But I feel like there's, I loved that in Avatar: The Last Airbender with like the 4, different, the Fire Nation, the Earth Kingdom. And then I feel like there's like, I have so many really niche examples of this, but like through a lot of fantasy viewing, even since I was a little kid, I always like loved that. Like, well, here's where the mermaids live and this is the unicorn field. Like I loved that. It was part of like the escapism for me. And so I really wanted to do a version of that, but I wanted it to be unique and not feel like I was ripping from, a million other things. So it was kind of like, what's something that, could be a good basis for how each of these kingdoms has like built their, society and what would make them different. Was trying to think about like what's natural to the earth. Is it, at one point it was like they're each based around the different flowers. I feel like anybody who reads this book or looks at the covers probably gets the idea that like I also really love flowers. But I was like, I had always loved gemstones, and I've said this before, like on like in interviews or in podcasts. So I apologize if you've heard this before, but I'm like a big, like if you go to the Natural History Museum, which I don't know if they have that in the UK, but they have it in the States and a lot of different states. There's like a gemstone exhibit where you can go and see all of the. It's amazing what has come from the earth, like the most vibrant colors, like the most beautiful. I mean, it looks like you're in a fantasy world, like these enormous, like lime green geodes. They're so beautiful. And I loved all the colors. I was always obsessed with that as a kid. And so I thought that was just like a really fun, it comes from the earth. It could grow anywhere, but it also would be so unique and like natural to each kingdom. So I had a lot of fun researching a bunch of different natural gemstones, like what are their properties? What do people, throughout history, believe that they are good for, or do they ward off, or do they bring? And then trying to like build the kingdoms off of that, which was really fun.
Yeah. We loved it. Yeah. I think we've always said since we read A Dawn of Onyx, like that was one of our most favourite things about this series, was like how you can define regions based on like the precious stones. Like we've always loved that.
Very unique. Yes. Definitely something we haven't seen before. sticking with Sacred Stones, but getting into Hosier as well.
Oh,
What
My
Hosier
favorite
song best describes Arwen and Cain?
oh my God, that is such an unbelievably excellent question. I think, okay, I actually was thinking about this recently, like separate from this. And I think the answer is like you want to say like work song, obviously, because that is like maybe the most romantic song that has ever been written in the history of the world. But I think the actual answer would be From Eden, which is actually my favorite Hosier song. So you too?
Yes. When you put it up on your like favorite things, it was like same favorite book, same favorite Hosier song. I was like tick 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 tick.
Oh my God, you and I soulmates. Yeah, I think. Well, then you probably know exactly what I mean. But like, I think there is, there's a huge amount of like thematic, like a big part of the series is that like Cain is dark and Arwen is light, and she, for lack of, for without sort of being like, and I've fully ripped it from this, but like she is Persephone and he is Hades. She is Bel and he is the beast. It's like I love stories like that. And I love also that it's like that's why they're so wonderful together, but also they throughout the book sort of like bring that out in one another. And I think while From Eden has some other, some other connotations too, that is sort of it's like it's being sung, the song for those who don't know it is being sung from the perspective of the devil, and he's looking at, Eve in the Garden of Eden and looking at sort of like, or I think there's also interpretations it's like a woman that reminds him of Eve. But anyway, she is like light and good and pure, and he sort of is struggling with the self-loathing of knowing that he's sort of like wicked. Themes we hear in Too Sweet as well, but we can get to that later. Anyway, but I would say that one, unlike Too Sweet, which is a little cynical and more of a breakup song, this is sort of like an ode, a song of undying love, and I think that would be their song.
I will never be able to listen to that song the same ever again, and it's the best thing ever because now I can like become obsessed with my favorite song all over again. There's a new reason to listen to it all the time in the car.
Wow, I'm so honored. That's such a wonderful feeling. Okay.
So it's probably no surprise that I wrote these Hosier questions. So I'm going to go with another Hosier question because
you don't understand. I wish everybody would ask me more Hosier.
So what Hosier song would best describe Marion Griffin?
Oh. Such a good question. Okay. I think that Marion Griffin, the song that would best describe them is Dinner and Diatribes. And I feel like that's because that song, again, for listeners who are like, what is this girl you're talking about? That song is from the perspective of a kind of low-key conversationalist, we can put it that way, someone who maybe does not love an introvert, someone who doesn't love social gatherings so much, which is true of Hosier, but also very true of Griffin, who is at like a social gathering with the woman that he is either dating or like intends to sleep with, or he's really there for her. There's a great line where he says, your friends are a fate that befell me. Like he is doing this for her, but like it is the worst thing he can imagine. And the whole song is about how all he can think about is getting out of this social engagement so they can go home and have unbelievable sex. And I think that like that in some ways sort of describes like Griffin wants her so badly and is sort of stuck in this like eternal, like they are always in some kind of social engagement with Cain and with Arwen and dealing with all of these things, war and travel and whatever. And like in his deepest heart of hearts, he would just like kill to have her alone. But obviously that has not happened yet. So I would say that's their song.
I'm literally never going to listen to these songs again. I'm just going to sit in my room on my own in my office and just listen to them over and over.
Okay, at some point we need like a full like only Hosier discussion because like the amount of research I've done into these songs and like what like I feel like I'm listening to them on a whole different level and I want to give that to you.
Yeah,
so
amazing.
I can't wait.
Love
That's
that.
so exciting.
So sticking with Mary and Griffin, will you write more in the Sacred Stones universe, and is there anything on the horizon for Mary and Griffin? If you're allowed to tell us.
Yeah, sure. Here's my very honest answer to that. So technically, I don't have anything like in writing or, I have a contract that I'm under right now with Berkeley, which I'm so excited about. And Marion Griffin's book is not a part of that. So technically, there's like nothing officially planned. That being said, I love them dearly. I purposely did not give them sort of like a little tie it with a bow ending because they have their own story that needs to be told. And there are some, I hope it's a satisfying ending for Arwen and Cain, but there are a few kind of like little threads that have been left loose, like if the stories were to continue. And I have every intention of continuing them through Mari and Griffin. I have like a full outline for their book. So I will write it. I obviously wrote a Dawn of Onyx thinking like nobody would read it. I never ever planned to publish it. And then speaking of Hosier, I may or may not have written like an entire book that was not fantasy that just like came to me literally after one concert thinking again, like nobody would read it. I just wrote it for myself. So, and who knows, maybe that book will be coming out. So I will say it would not be unlike me to just like write Griffin and Mari's book and then be like, well, now I either have to like bring this to my publisher and see what can be done or self-pub it again and just let anyone who loves them, they get to read it, or even like put the whole thing up on my website for free. So in some way, shape, or form, they need their happy ending. It will get written. The question is just sort of like when and how. Has not been determined yet.
Yeah, because
that makes me so happy.
We both said the exact same thing in this week's episode. Was like, as much as like there was a tiny piece of my heart that was like, do we get a Mari and Griffin conclusion? But also I think I was totally fine with it because we said the exact same thing. They deserve their own time. Like they have such a complex relationship, which is wonderful, but like it needs time to be like worked through, doesn't it? Like
100%. And I went through versions in my head, like in that final battle when it's like, you wonder if anyone's going to make it alive. Like, does he just like grab her and kiss her? But like in my heart, I was like, he would just never do that. He is a general first and he's never been in love. And this is a person who, even if like on a deep level, he would die for Mari, like he's not thinking about like the big romantic gesture. Like he has men that need to be saved and the fate of the realms. Like that's what he's thinking about. He wants her to live, but he's not thinking with his dick at this moment. And she is like, I think even less in touch with her feelings actually than he is. I mean, throughout the series, he has said, to various characters at various points, like he knows he has feelings for her. And there's a bonus scene from his perspective on my website that I wrote that like, if whenever I write this book will probably be like a prologue. But he knows that he has these feelings for her. I don't even know if she is like fully aware that she feels this way about him. So I don't think she's like running up to him in the final moments of battle and being like, just in case. And then I was like, do you put it in the epilogue? But now it's like it's the end of the story for us. But for them, it's like just, the next day. It's like the life continues for them. And I don't think either of them have any kind of intention to like blow up their lives and put themselves on the line. They hadn't before, so I don't know why they would now. I think something much bigger would have to happen for that to happen between them. And yeah, I just couldn't justify it. Felt like their story would take longer to get to a hopefully happy ending for them.
Yes, we will be waiting up
yes.
at midnight whenever that gets released.
Okay, I will say this, and please don't hold me to it because who knows, but I'm like feeling so inspired because it's like the number one thing that that people have reached out to me with, being like, Griffin Mari, please, Griffin Mari. And I'm like, should I just write the book over the holidays? In my job, I get like a 2-week break over the holidays. It's not enough time to write a book, but it is enough time to start writing a book. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We've started using, like, I don't know if you've heard of Fable, the app, the like, so when people can see the books we're going to do in coming weeks, so they can like read along with us. So obviously we did a Rain of Roses on there when we were reading along, and like in all the chapters that we were commenting, all of our listeners, that was the number one thing, was like, yeah, but Mari and Griffin, and we were like, we know.
By the way, what's so funny is like, when you're writing books like these, and you said you were a writer too, so I don't know if you write romance, but maybe you get this, you agree with this, or maybe you don't. I want to know either way. But like, you have to like have a massive crush on whoever, doesn't have to be the guy or the girl, but like you have to have like lusty feelings also to at least like, get into the writing. Like if you're not crushing on your guy or your girl or whoever it is, I feel like you can't conjure those feelings. But then sort of as you write, those feelings fade, because at least for me, they start to feel like your children. You're like, I'm not attracted to Cain anymore because he is like my baby, but like I'm so attracted to Griffin, like I'm obsessed with him. And so it's like, that's how you know you're ready to start writing it, because you're like, I need to see this man like on his knees for this girl. Like I need it. You know what I mean? So, and it won't happen unless I do it. So I got to get to work.
Yeah. If not for anyone else, if just for yourself, like just.
Yeah, you have to be your own biggest fan. You know?
Yes, 100%. I know you mentioned, obviously, because like, you know, we subscribe to your newsletter, we're absolutely obsessed. You did mention that there was an extra spicy scene that was removed from A Reign of Rose that will be coming out on your newsletter by the end of the year. Can you give us like anything, like just a crumb of basically what is in that scene, or like why was it so spicy that it was taken out? Like, we need to know.
Yes, oh my God, that's so funny. Okay, I feel like I should just say what it is, and it'll be a fun exclusive on this. When does this podcast come out?
A week today.
Okay. It is the scene when they are at the hotel in Review in Rose. They're like lying in bed, and it was sort of like my take on this is what we're talking about, like trying to come up with tensiony things to do. Like you can't do the one bed trope with a couple that's in love. They're just gonna bang, which is great, but not very interesting. So I was like, what is my version of the one bed trope? Okay, it's 2 beds, 4 people, and then you can't have sex. So I had written this, but then they were like so hot for each other, and obviously like there's so much pent up like emotion, whatever, that they had sort of like gone out into the hallway and had sex in the middle of the hotel, which was like totally like maybe uncharacteristic, but also it was like Arwen's coming into her own and she's feeling more confident than she ever has. And they're both probably thinking like there's a chance they don't have that much time left together. So like kind of who cares? And they have like really, really slutty, hot hotel sex. My editor was like, also, it was by far the dirtiest scene I had ever written. Like, I don't know what possessed me, but I was like, I'm just going to throw everything at the wall and just like see what happens. Like, this is X-rated, whatever. My editor was like, first of all, who possessed you? What's happening? Like, this is so intense. But her bigger note, she loves smut. She's a smut girly too. Her bigger note was not that it was too spicy, although it is spicier than anything else in the books. Her bigger note was that it really affected the pacing. And she's totally right. And this is why editors are so great, because one too many spicy scenes, like it throws off the like propulsion of the novel, or at least it did for mine. Like for the second act, it's like we were moving and things were going, but that's also a section of the book where like you're getting a lot of found family, you're having a lot of laughs, like they're in Mari's room and it's a mess, and they're on the roof and they're talking about brothels, and like there's not a lot of high, stakes. And that was just like an entire chapter that slowed things down even more because it was just a sex scene. And so she was like, I think it has to go, but you can put it in a newsletter. And I was like, and you know what? I was fine with it. I think that meant she was so right, because I wasn't like, no, this is integral to the story. Like, if you had asked me to cut, the scene where they have sex in the forest, I would be like, no, that's so important. That was like them coming back together again. That was more about the emotions. If you had asked me to cut the scene where, Arwen and Cain are they sort of swap like who's in control, it's like some control play, I would be like, no, that's about her power and her confidence and him learning to let go. Like, but this was like, no, this was just horny. So, but now everyone gets to read it. I'm so excited.
That literally, Sam's 2 favorite scenes in A Reign of Rose were the wood scene and the swap control scenes. But she asked me like, what were your favorite scenes? And mine were like really like sincere,
his were like really romantic, sincere things, and I was like, smut and smut.
Yeah, you're like, someone like took over Kate and made her sluttier, and that's my favorite part about this book.
I love it. And we always say like, we love all the spice in this series, but there's something about a spice scene from Cain's POV. Like, I don't know what it is, Kate. I don't know what you do. Like, I don't know what crack you lace that book with, but there's just something about it that's like, wow.
Amazing.
Guess what? This is from Cain's POV.
And I was gonna ask, and I was like, are you allowed to tell us? But I really need to know. Oh my God.
Yes, I'm happy to report. It's always dirtier in his POV too.
Yeah.
Because it's like, he's had a lot of sex. He's just sees things differently than she does,
Yeah, we're obsessed with it. I can't wait.
Okay, that will come in December, probably early December. So if
it's
you're
like
not
early Christmas.
you can sign up for a newsletter through my website or through the link tree on my Instagram. It's called Kate Dates. It's a Substack.
So exciting. We can't wait.
Oh my god, that's amazing. Okay, so moving away from Sacred Stones, if you can you describe your new series Half City in 3 words?
Oh my gosh, in 3 words. Okay. Can they be like compound words?
100%.
Okay. I appreciate you being lenient with me. Dark academia, angsty, badass. I feel like that's what I've got.
I'm so excited.
Yeah, so excited. When you posted it, we both we were like,
I'm so glad. I have wanted to write this for a really long time. I think the idea came to me when I had not even written Peridot yet. And because I was late to the game watching Buffy, which is insane because it is so, anybody that knows me, you guys know me well by now, like I'm the person who should be watching Buffy, and somehow I didn't watch it until like truly 2023. And I watched, I think, all 7 seasons in the span of like a month. And there's like 23 episodes a season. I could not get enough. I was like mainlining it into my veins. And this idea was sort of born of like if like Buffy, I'm also like a Supernatural fan. So it's like if Buffy and like the Supernatural brother, like if all of the greatest characters that hunt the things that go bump in the night went to the same college, like what would that look like? And what would it be like if my, main character was more of like a Faith than a Buffy? If you're a Buffy fan, then you will know what that means. And if not, don't worry. But like, a little darker, kind of like, I was really interested in writing someone that was sort of like the anti-Arwen. Like, this is not a like light and positivity. She's got a lot of demons, no pun intended. And I wanted to write her story. And if someone who obviously hunts demons, what would be the worst thing you can imagine? Probably falling for one. So I had a lot of fun kind of like crafting this idea, but then I couldn't write it for such a long time. So I was so excited to begin writing it. But then actually that was the hardest book I ever wrote. So,
yeah, we're so excited. As soon as we finished The Reign of Rose and we saw the like graphic page, we were like, ah!
Oh, I can't wait. I'm so excited. I can't wait to share with everyone. I hope to have, pre-order and cover and a release date for everyone pretty soon.
Yay. So kind of sticking on the same topic of like future projects, what is on the horizon for your Hosier romance?
Yes. Okay. Great question. Well, what day is it today? Today that we're recording it, it's the 23rd, but this will come out, I guess, a week from then.
So the 30th. Yes.
Yeah, so if you're listening to this, we are just about like 3 weeks out from some very big information on that. So I am on a little social media hiatus after releasing Rose, trying to just sometimes, when you're like so on Instagram and TikTok that you start like going to check it at red lights or like at every, like in any spare moment of your life. So I was like, oh, I need a little break. But when I come back on November 21st, I'll have a very exciting piece of information about that. So that is sort of all I can say right now. But if you want to make sure that you are the first to know about anything Hosiermance, which for those, if anyone's listening who does know what that is, it is a journey that I went on to, even though I have never written contemporary before and never thought that I would, and unclear if I ever will again, to write a contemporary rock star romance inspired by the artist Hosier. So if you want to be, kept up to date on anything like that, the newsletter will have information on the 21st. So if you're subscribed to the newsletter, you'll just get a nice little email. But if you're not, you can find on Instagram and on TikTok, I will have posted something on November 21st. And I am so excited. I cannot wait. I'm like counting down the minutes.
I feel like the next coming weeks are like, we're getting so many treats from you. Like, there's just so much. And we're so excited.
I'm just grateful that everyone else is so excited. It's like, there's nothing more wonderful in the world than something that you're so passionate about that's been in like like a bubble that's just you. And then you finally get to share it with people and they're excited too. I mean, that's one of the greatest joys ever. So I'm thrilled that you're thrilled.
Can't wait.
Excited. Okay. So stepping away from your books, what is one book outside of your own that you will always recommend to people?
Oh my gosh. I have like a million. Okay, wait, can you give me a genre? Or should I do like one for each genre?
should you say romantic? Like romantic, yeah, fantasy, romance, romantasy. I think that's like.
Okay, fantasy, romance, romantasy. I think the one I always find myself recommending after ACOTAR, but I would imagine most people listening to this have read ACOTAR, is the Plated Prisoner series by. Oh, you guys too?
We literally attended a Raven Kennedy signing a few weeks ago. We drove up to Birmingham. It was like, what, a 3.5 hour drive each way? But Raven was in the UK and we were like, we have to be there.
Oh my God, I'm so jealous. I love those books. They were, by the way, like, I obviously read ACOTAR first, but then I read a lot of other romantasy before I started to write my own. And Raven Kennedy's was maybe the last one where I was like, this has everything I want. And then I never found it again. Or like probably now it has. But at that time, I really had read everything. Yeah. So I was like, wait, this is all of the things that I love in romantasy. And I had such a bad book hangover from that I wrote my own book. So like, I owe a lot to Raven. That series is incredible. I always recommend that book.
Yeah, I'm literally like got about a third of Goldfinch left. I'm like 2/3 of my way through Goldfinch. And
I've been on deadline for both the not Hoserman's book that definitely is not being written and the first draft of Half City, and so I've missed out on a lot of books that have recently come out, but that one is absolutely top of the list. I can't wait to finish the story.
Yeah, once I finished A Reign of Rose, I was so sad that I was like, right, what will pick me up from this? And I was like, I make myself more sad and read the last book and Play Prisoner as well. And I was like, I can have a double.
Like a double. Yeah.
Exactly. So our last question of the interview is, and I know you just said you're currently on deadline, so there might be like not much of an answer to this, but if you are reading, what are you currently reading right now?
Oh, the honest, there's nothing worse than pretending you're reading something that you aren't reading. I always want to be, I'm a bad liar anyways. I have not read a book for pleasure in about a month and a half because between Rose coming out and then these two being on double deadline, which is like a hell I would not wish on my worst enemy. I'm so grateful to write, but it is exhausting.
Yeah.
I have not been reading for fun. I will say I am halfway through Amber Nicole's Book of Azrael because I really wanted to read it before I did the event with her, and loving it. Just haven't finished it yet. But the last book that I picked up and read and loved was Butcher and Blackbird, which I was obsessed with.
Ooh.
We haven't read it yet.
We haven't. It's on the TBR.
Yeah. You know what? I get it because it's not fantasy, but it has he feels like such a fantasy hero. Yeah, I think you guys would really dig it.
Yeah, we definitely want to read it. It's on our TBR, and we are huge fans for Amber's series. It is chef's kiss.
Oh, so good. Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is all our questions. We just want to say thank you so much for agreeing to do this. This is a bit of a sidebar, but you were the first ever author to ever say yes to coming on our podcast. So we just want to say thank you for that because you gave us the courage to, because we honestly never thought that that was never on our bingo card was to interview authors. We just thought why would any authors want to talk to us? And since then we've had Pen Cole, Callie Hart, Amber, because you saying yes gave us the confidence to be maybe other people will say yes.
Yeah,
maybe.
Definitely.
So thank you.
You're too sensitive. You're going to make me cry. That's so happy. Genuinely, that's the most wonderful thing. I'm so glad because this was so wonderful. Your podcast is so wonderful. And I'm so glad that now other authors get to come on and your listeners get to hear it that has made my day. I'm so, so glad. And thank you for asking me and for being fans and for such a wonderful, the questions were so thoughtful and this was so fun. I'm I'll come back anytime you'll have me.
Thank you.
Oh, Kate Golden. How are you feeling?
I just, I'm not allowed to say the happiest I've ever been because I've got married and birthed a child, but maybe after all those big life milestones, this is probably the biggest.
Yeah, that was amazing. She's so nice.
We have been honestly so lucky. Everybody we speak to is so nice.
And
we didn't obviously expect her to not be so nice, but she's an actual delight.
Yeah.
I feel like Kate might be listening to us and be absolutely fucking not. But in real life, I feel like we could be friends.
Yeah, I feel like we are friends.
I feel like Kate would love a cheeky, baby Guinness or a rosé tequila. I feel like we'd go out and have a good laugh.
Yeah, we could girls' holiday together.
Yeah, she'd love it.
So I hope all of our listeners enjoyed as much as we did because that was honestly she's left me buzzing. Like,
And
I'm
if you
so
didn't
happy.
enjoy it, tough shit, because that's the best thing we've ever done.
If you didn't enjoy, you're in the wrong place.
Fuck off.
We can't say that.
I can. Tough shit, it's okay.
Um,
I'll act the 2-star reviewer on Apple.
we had a 2-star review on Apple Podcasts, and B is
I'm fuming.
B is not sitting well with it.
Everyone's entitled to an opinion, but that person's opinion is wrong.
We are 5 stars only.
Only. So join us next week for a collab that is still yet to be titled, so we can't tell you.
Yeah, for an untitled, ambiguous collab at the moment.
But it's basically the gist of it is you don't need to have listened. It's not a book. It's a like fun. Another episode's on fun. I hate saying that, but it's
a book recommendation episode, and
spoiler free.
Yeah, we
romanticy.
talk about tropes and romantic books.
But we've just yet to get like a title because it's been a collab. We yet to get a title or anything, so we can't really tell you. So we've got a little bit of a cool off week next week, just a bit of like a easy going. And then the week after, we are starting the big beautiful world of Chris Broadbent with The Serpent and the Wings of Night.
Yeah, we are going back to Nyaxia.
So join us on Fable if you want to read along, because we're probably, at least I am, going to do a reread of that for next week's episode, or in 2 weeks' time episode. And then we're going to do Ashes. 6 Scorched Roses will be our Patreon episode for November. Yeah. And then after that, Metal Slinger. And then after that, Rachel Schneider. And after that, TBC.
Merry bloody Christmas.
Yeah. Mum and Mum are going on holidays.
So yeah, anything else to say?
No.
Okay.
I fucking love Kate Golden. That's what I'll close that with.
And happy Halloween.
Oh yeah, will it be Halloween when this comes out? Oh yeah, it'll be like soon.
Tomorrow.
The day after. Yeah.
Tomorrow
in the world. Yeah. Happy Halloween.
Happy spooky season.
Spooky season.
Thanks so much for listening.
Follow us on TikTok and Instagram at A Pod of Smut and Wingspan.
See you next week.
Bye.